it was very popular with consumers, and you'd see little ads here and there, but like the total dollar amount was not great.
Welcome to the 1% Edge podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary guests committed to getting 1% better every day. Today's topic, mastering the ad tech game. And to help us, I'm honored to have Ari Paparo.
Yeah, Paparo.
Paparo.
I don't know. My great grandparents from Greece said it differently. So how am I here in modern day supposed to tell them how to pronounce it?
Well, I just kind of Americanized my name and just went with it. That was my. So, all right, you got an amazing background. I don't know how you have time to being a husband and have a family, because CEO, serial entrepreneur, board member, podcaster, and then, in your spare time, author. And you've released the book called Yield: How Google Bought, Built, Bullied Its Way to the Advertising Dominance. Welcome to the show, Ari.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm kind of busy, but I'm also very efficient. Get a lot done.
It seems like the more we do, the more efficient we become. It's the only way to get a lot done.
It's true. The family doesn't become more efficient, though. It's
Yeah, it is so true. I've done a couple of these podcasts talking about how to balance, personal, family, and work. And it's funny because I've started to take it from the podcast. I'm starting to take it more to heart. I've always put work ahead of everything, and maybe it's a sign of old age, Ari. But I'm trying to be a better partner, a better family member.
Someone once told me it's like work, fitness, family. Choose 2 out of 3, which is not great, but that it does kind of boil down your options.
Yeah, the CMO of Gong told me it's like he had four topics, and he goes, it's like a 4-burner stove. You can't burn all of them all out all the time.
Yeah, sure. Got it.
So it's like kind of the balance thing. All right. Why don't we take a step back for our listeners? What is the ad tech game? Why is it changing so fast? Give us a little background, and then maybe we can dive into some strategy and some tactics.
Yeah, sure. Let's zoom all the way out, which is since the 1990s, consumers have been spending more and more time on digital and less time on analog. And that started out with, the web and banner ads, and then it moved to the phone and smartphones. And now, especially since COVID, it's TV, and people have cord cut, and now they're watching advertising supported TV. And all that digital stuff is really complicated. It's not bought and sold like over martinis and Mad Men style. There are obviously people on Madison Avenue and creatives and all that, but the actual buying is much more akin to Wall Street. There are bids, there are algorithms, there are quants that figure out which ad should show at every single moment to you as a consumer and for you as an advertiser. That whole cloud of companies and techniques and technologies is ad tech. Advertising technology. I've been doing it since the mid 2000s. My career has been at places like Google, which is probably the largest ad tech company in the world. But also there's quite a robust ecosystem of startups and public companies and other folks who are involved in this world in some way and trying to help advertisers reach the right customers at the right price on any of those screens I mentioned earlier.
Excellent. So you said something, Google, probably the biggest ad tech company in the world. How did that happen? For some of our listeners, they just think of them as, hey, they just have search.
Yeah.
And, and maybe now Gemini and some other stuff, but, and they have some great little apps that we could use online. But they really make their money off the ad tech. Is that true?
Well, no, they make more money on search, but they're incredibly dominant in ad tech as well. So rough numbers, I'd say half of all the ads you see on any screen are touched by Google in some way, by Google's tech. Maybe a lot more in some areas. How this happened, that's really what I tell the story about in my book. But effectively, go back in time, 2004-ish, Google had IPO'd. They were growing like literally 90% a year on billions of dollars in revenue because it was all search. Search was the greatest business model ever invented. And they're just printing money, right? And they're saying, and they have AdSense, which at the time was a way for, small websites to make a little money with text ads. And inside the company, they were very ambitious, and they were like, why are we not winning at these like banner ads and video ads and mobile ads? Like, there's this whole world out there outside of search, and we're the best engineers in the world. We have more advertisers logging into AdWords every day than any ever been assembled in any advertising system in history. And they were struggling because it was just really different. It was measured different, it worked different, etc. And the story of the book is it kicks off effectively. They acquire a company called DoubleClick, and that's a company I worked at that was a pretty big public software company in New York, but not known as a very sexy company. It was sort of like the infra of advertising. But what it had was near monopoly market share on software sold to publishers who sold ads. So the CNNs, the New York Times of the world all use DoubleClick. And so they take this position, they acquire the software company that determines what ads show up, and then they tie it together with their millions and millions of advertisers on Google Ads. And suddenly you have demand and supply matching in real time, and it takes off. And effectively, it's a better mousetrap for everybody. Publishers make more money, advertisers get better results, and it all flows through Google's pipes where they take a nice, 32% take on those impressions in some cases, sometimes bigger, and slowly but surely they squeeze out everybody else. And currently, some of their tools, it was discovered in court, their main tool, which is the publisher ad server, has 90% market share, which is pretty high. So it's very complicated, but that's the short version of the story.
That's amazing, because they also, with the other thing I've heard for search, obviously people use Google for search,
Of course.
but they also use YouTube a lot of times to search for information, and they own them too.
Yeah, YouTube is the number 2 search engine in the world, right? Which is crazy. You think Bing or maybe Ask Jeeves would be number 2, but no, YouTube is so much larger than those. And what's also been interesting is, so YouTube got acquired right around the same time DoubleClick did, back in 2004-ish. And for a while, YouTube was just not making that much money. It was very popular with consumers, and you'd see little ads here and there, but like the total dollar amount was not great. And slowly but surely, it has become larger and larger and larger. And now, if you look at the financial statements of Alphabet, Google's holdco, YouTube division is the second largest after search, and is much larger than the ad tech division, which used to be this giant. So YouTube keeps growing, ad tech is flat or declining. And it's generally believed that Google is sort of intentionally moving dollars towards YouTube whenever the advertiser gives them carte blanche as to how it should run.
All right, so which this is maybe a little too tactical, but it seems I invested in this small business, and it seems like we went from it's been 13 years. We went from paper ads, like sending ads people's homes,
Yep,
to being the majority of our advertising dollars, to digital being the majority of our dollars, because even seniors are using the internet to go find businesses and get information, right? So is that changing? So we talk about Google search and YouTube search being the top 2 search engines. Is that pivoting in today's world?
Well, consumers are continuing to digitize all aspects of their lives. The traditional TV, linear TV, is been on a long-term decline, and at some point it's going to become so small people won't care. And it's largely held up in the U.S. just by the NFL. But print still works in direct mail. That is, people do open their mail. They read the little postcards and things like that. That still works. I think traditional print, meaning newspapers, magazines, definitely is starting to skew a lot older. So you kind of have to figure out what techniques make sense. But there's no doubt that digital is going to continue to dominate and grow to the point where it's the vast majority of the $1 trillion total global advertising market.
Okay. And I also feel like I can't have a podcast without mentioning AI, it seems like.
Yeah.
with the advent of AI, I find that some people are, hey, instead of me doing a Google search for this information, hey, I'm just going to use AI to go get this information. How's that
Yeah.
impacting ad tech dollars?
Yeah, it's not yet, but everyone's watching it because it's going to be a very big deal. So once again, start with the consumer. What are consumers doing? Increasingly, they're using AI as a supplement or a replacement for traditional search, and that's because it's just so much better. Instead of giving you search results, which are effectively links where you have to click on them and learn what they do and things like that, AI just gives you an answer to your question, and you're done. And so, what's happening. So here's the stats we have. It's very uncertain what's going on, but I'll just give you the stats about what's going on. First, for the first time in 15 years, Google's market share has been going down. They had been on a straight line up since the invention of their search engine till like 3 or 4 quarters ago. And they were up at 90% in most countries. And it's starting to go down a little bit, 89%, whatever it is. And that's because some consumers are using ChatGPT instead. Now Google has Gemini, they have search results. They're trying to fight back, but this is a big deal. Like, secondly, and related to this, there's an antitrust trial, another one, not the one I wrote about in my book, but the other one in DC that is about to have its remedies published. Like, it could be as soon as this week, where the judge is going to ask them to spin out the Chrome browser and potentially syndicate all of their search data to let people who are competitive get all that data and compete in the search market. If the government is successful, it might take a couple of years. That could radically change the market share that Google has, so that as a marketer, as an advertiser, currently you could probably don't go wrong just putting your money in Google. But there could be an environment within the next couple of years where you have to split your money. You have to give some to OpenAI and some to Google and some to Bing and some to this and that and the other thing. So that's interesting. That's in terms of market share. The second question is, what do the ads work as well? And so the effect of AI is definitely that consumers click less because they get the answer. They don't have to click out to you. So that's maybe bad for advertising. But there's this counter trend, which is when the consumers do click out, they are much more educated about your product already. So they're not clicking to window shop. They're clicking to because they already know what they're likely to find on your webpage, and they're interested in that. So conversion rates and the value of the click is going up. So it's a pretty interesting situation all around, where like all of the assumptions that we've all baked in for 15 years are getting thrown in the air and reshuffled, and we'll see. Basically, is the best I could offer.
It also seems that, and again, this is your world, not mine. So if I say this wrong, please, correct it. But, before, right, we had like the sponsor, we did a search. We had the people that paid for advertising came up first.
Yep.
And you tried really hard to be on that first or second page, right?
Yep.
Now what comes up first is really Gemini. Let me tell you what I think you want to hear.
Yep.
And then everything else below it. So it's becoming even harder and harder to get on that first page. Do I have that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, getting on the first page is harder, but also getting into Gemini now is the trick. So if a consumer searches for, what sort of luxury raincoat should I wear to work, and you're Burberry, how do you get in that answer, right? Because maybe the AI has been trained in such a way that they prefer Tom Ford. And so there's this new world that's sometimes called AEO or AI optimization, or AIO, or some people are calling it GEO, which is confusing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What's important is that you as a brand have built a website that is meant for human beings. The point of your website is to have a human being read it and buy something or do whatever. And you have to change your approach a lot if the reader is not a human being. The reader is an AI that can absorb 100,000 words about your product easily, right? They don't care about imagery. They care about text and organized text. And so there's some very interesting research and development going on in this area, and there's lots of startups also trying to go into brands saying we'll help you in your AI rankings, but there's a lot to shake out. The one thing I definitely think, as if there's one piece of advice I would have right now, is like more content's better. Just as much text as possible. Talk about your product. Start writing for the AIs instead of the humans.
Since you say that, so I had Judy Shapiro. She's out of New York as well, and we were talking about to help your results, you need to put more content out there, not just like hey, here's who we are website,
Yeah.
but hey, where's your case studies?
Mhm.
Where's your thought leadership? You got to try to. That's the kind of, in her opinion, if I got it right, that's the kind of data that the AI loves to kind of absorb and create opinions from. Is that the right approach?
I think there's some of that. I think that it's complicated is kind of the short answer, but more content's better. I think content that's created with AI is probably going to be devalued by the AI because there's a lot of academic research that says if you train AI on AI, it kind of spirals down to the lowest common denominator. There's also some research that says that certain websites are considered much more authoritative by the AIs, like, for example, Reddit. So if there's some way to get your products discussed on Reddit in depth, that's really good. And if you're a technical product, then being on Stack Overflow. So these kind of these websites that have a lot of text are really important. I might also think if you're on YouTube, transcripts might be helpful, longer descriptions. It's all about feeding the text monster.
Interesting. So yeah, because it won't listen to, it won't create its own transcript from a video. It's going to just look at the content around it, at least for
it
now.
It might. I think YouTube has auto captioning already, but it doesn't work that well. But if you put like a video on your own website, the odds are that people are not going to transcribe it because it's just expensive. It costs a lot of CPUs to transcribe a video. So unless there's some signal that's worth the money, they probably won't.
Got it. All right. Ad tech market moving fast, a lot of changes. It's not all settled out yet. Maybe it'll never be, right? Because it's, as soon as it is, something else comes along. Any advice or strategies for B2B companies that are trying to ride this wave? Like what advice might you have for them to try to maximize their ad tech dollars?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have any original advice, but I'll just sort of repeat the basics. So first of all, hygiene is really important. So having your sort of data hygiene in terms of tagging your pages and using Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics or whatever you're using for conversions and making sure it all works properly is kind of step one. Because like if you don't do that, you're just wasting money. The traditional stack is that people start with Google and Meta and they see if that works and what the ROAS is on those two sources. And then they branch out. Depends on your size, of course. Maybe some big marketers are way beyond that. But that's usually the starting point. And then for B2B, obviously, LinkedIn is becoming really important. What we found personally is that LinkedIn is increasingly de-emphasizing business page posts, and they're putting a lot more emphasis on human posts, which means that there's kind of a limit to what you can get done by posting official content from your business account. I mean, it's worth doing and maybe spending money on accelerating, but figuring out who's the thought leader in your company, hopefully the CEO, and having them post is much more valuable than having the business account post. Another interesting area that I'm involved in a bit is what I would call the democratization of TV advertising. If you go back to the linear world, be on national TV, it's $100,000 to get a meeting. Local TV, maybe through your cable provider, you're a car dealership, whatever, $25,000, a couple of months lead time to film the videos and stuff. But now that we're in the digital world, there are a number of startups that will let you buy TV ads for $100 a month or something like that, and they'll use AI to actually create the ads for you. So I'm involved in a company called Vibe.co, E48.co. I love what they're doing. Like, it's like AdWords. It's like, give us a credit card and you'll be running on TV. But I'll talk about the rest of the companies. So Mountain is pretty well known. Ryan Reynolds is a spokesperson for them, and they're a public company. So they do something similar. There's also a company called TV Scientific, which is a little more like analytics and results oriented. So I would strongly recommend, if you have an interesting message, looking at, experimenting and seeing if TV works for your brand, because all these products have good conversion reporting and things like that. Another company I'm involved with personally, I just want to disclose that, but I think it's really interesting, is called Octane 11. So Octane 11 is like a dashboard for B2B marketers that pulls in all the results from like LinkedIn and Google and all those places, and then aligns them with your CRM. So you could see from a B2B perspective if you're moving people down the funnel based on how much you're spending on those platforms. And so they're a nice little toolkit for B2B marketing. So that's kind of my off the top of my cuff, overview of B2B advertising best practices.
Hey, and for those in our audience that don't know what ROAS is, it's revenue on ad spend. If I got that right,
return on ad spend.
Return on ad spend.
Yeah. So traditional metric is like CPI, cost per install, cost per newsletter sign up, whatever. That's great. You should do that. But if you're selling a product, you really want to have your the total amount of revenue you made on new customers divided by the total amount you spent on advertising within a cohort. And you want to do it by cohort because sometimes it takes a while for the revenue to show up, depending on your business model. So you want to look like, of all the people we reached in the cohort of, like, let's say last April, how much did we spend in advertising last April versus how much have those acquired customers spent with us, and then do, discount it for time.
If you get a long sales cycle, that's kind of, I guess, that impacts it.
Yeah. Long sales cycle. You just have to make best guesses about what a customer at different points of your funnel is worth. If you have a proof of concept, you have a contract, you have to just kind of guesstimate on that.
All right. So I got a selfish question. So more and more folks are doing podcasts. You have a podcast. I got a podcast. Where does podcasting kind of come into ad tech, or does it at all? Is it just more brand awareness?
Yeah, podcasting is sort of the new blogging. It's free. Anyone can do it. It doesn't cost that much to get going. It's probably cheaper than writing for some people. And it has some positive effects. I think getting people to listen to your podcast is hard. The loyalty is limited. And the tools out there like Spotify and Apple are not very helpful. They don't like recommend it and things like that. So you end up taking clips and putting them on LinkedIn and stuff like that, which is also somewhat effective. So I think the jury's out on the ROI of podcasts. It's relatively cheap and it gets your name out there. So there's some positives to it. In terms of making money or buying ads, so the podcast market is estimated to be about a $2 billion market in the US in terms of advertising. It is definitely dominated by the large, very popular pods that are sold through ad networks. So like Wondery and Megaphone from Spotify, and they have all these names out there. For my podcast personally, which is called Marketecture, is very focused on the ad tech market. So we sell our ads directly because obviously if you have, 5,000, 10,000 listeners who are just all focused on one topic, then you can sell ads directly at a very high price because it's worth it to reach them. It's the same as like sponsoring a conference or something like that. But if you're like true crime, general interest, you're not gonna be able to sell ads unless you're one of the top, 50 podcasts, right?
Got it. All right. So another question, it may be a little self-serving as well. So today, we think about younger generations and how to reach them. Social has become, a big part of it. And people, someone even told me, Carlos, for example, 20 somethings might look you up on Insta more than they'll look you up on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So any advice, and I guess maybe it depends on the market you're going after, on how does social become part of your ad tech spend?
Yeah. So there's paid and there's earned, right, as the two basic concepts. So paid ads is through Meta primarily, but also through TikTok, depending on your product, and that's pretty straightforward, right? You're buying ads, you're hoping people click through and do something. Fine. Earned is more interesting, I think. The option of like, can you create your own content people listen to, either because it's informative or fun or interesting or whatever. One thing to think about is whose face it should be. Like for me and Marketecture, for those listening in audio, I'm a 54-year-old white dude. I was just self-aware enough to say, like, I'm not going to be the TikTok face of Marketecture, right? And we brought on a really talented young lady who's just as informed about the topics as I am, and she does this fantastic work. She's got thousands of followers, and it's a really great investment. So you should be also asking yourself, who at your company or associated with your company is the right messenger on these social networks. Influencers are so hot right now. Basically paying somebody to talk about your brand on these things, finding the right influencer and figuring out if it worked or not, obviously, is a huge challenge. And that's where there's like lots of these find an influencer, measure it kind of companies out there. But they're not cheap. You're not going to pay $500 for an influencer. You can pay 10,000 or more for them to talk about your product, depending on who they are. So that's something you have to navigate yourself.
Interesting. So, any closing thoughts on this ad tech world for customers out there? If is there a mistake that you're seeing over and over again that you want them to avoid?
Well, the trade-off in ad tech in general with all these companies is control versus performance. So you're sitting there and someone's going to promise you results. Don't worry about it, right? And Google does this too. So when you log into AdWords nowadays, they're going to say, just give us your money and we'll tell you if it worked, right? They call it PMax. Performance Max is the name of the program there. And more than half of the ads on Google right now are in that program. And it works. Like they have better AI than you do, and they find the place to put your ads. But where did your ads show, and what does it mean to convert? Like, who are these people who are converting? And it turns out your ad was on some really crappy websites out there. Maybe not bad websites like pornography or whatever, but just like really low quality, crappy content. So that's a choice. Like, do you want to go with like set it and forget it and help and just do your best, or do you want to roll up your sleeves and know exactly what you're doing and maybe have a higher quality ad campaign that goes on sites that you understand and YouTube videos you like and stuff like that, which is a lot more work and maybe actually lower ROAS or ROI because it has less kind of vanity metrics and good looking reports. So that's always a trade-off. I'm not telling you which side to go in the trade-off, but you should be aware that there is this trade-off.
Fair enough. So, all right, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm on my second career. I've been in ad tech for 20 years. I've been in New York the whole time. I mentioned Google where I used to work, and then I had a company called Beeswax that we sold to Comcast in 2021, and still running as part of Comcast. So since that point, I have started a journalistic career where I'm writing all the time, writing about advertising, and I have a weekly newsletter, podcast, and now I have a book out. So this is kind of a fun adventure for me to do something a little outside of my comfort zone.
That's awesome. It's and I mean, you got a lot going on, so that's
yeah, I do.
So I think one of the good things about having a lot going on, you get to talk to a lot of different people from different perspectives, and it keeps you fresh, right? It just keeps you going.
Yeah, I mean, I am not a practitioner day to day. I'm not buying any ads for anybody or selling any ads. So the way I keep on top of my game is talking to people who are interesting, who have ideas, some of which I agree with, some I don't. People say something obnoxious on Twitter, and I'm like, hey, come on the podcast and say that obnoxious thing. We'll see what it means. And that was fun. And, I wrote this book last year, which was fascinating. So the history here is that, so Google, I mentioned antitrust earlier. Google is under 3 different antitrust cases. And I concentrated on the one about ad tech. So there was an antitrust case in Virginia about Google's domination of the ad tech world, the Department of Justice took them to federal court. And I decided to actually go to the courtroom for 3 weeks and follow it in person with taking notes longhand and running back to my hotel room and writing little newsletters every week about what happened during the courthouse, which was really a great experience. And out of that, I decided to write a book, and because I thought it was such a dramatic story. It wasn't just this like techno thing. It was like really interesting people stories. And I bring this up because you're talking about talking to people. I interviewed like 60 different people who were involved in the case and told their stories. And that's what was the genesis of my book, Yield.
Is that first case come to a conclusion? I'm sorry, I wasn't following it.
So the judge found them to be an abusive monopoly. So they are a monopoly in ad tech. They actually have been found to be an abusive monopoly 3 times in the last 12 months, which is some sort of corporate record. So they were their app store was found monopolistic in the Epic case. Their search was found guilty in DC, and their ad tech was found guilty in Virginia. And it's not criminal trials. Guilty is like a strong word. It's not really guilty, but abusive. So the next step in the ad tech case is that there will be a remedy hearing starting September 22nd back in Virginia, and I will be there. And the judge, the DOJ is asking the judge to force a spin out of their key assets in the ad tech world. So that'll be fun.
So just break it out in a bit.
Yeah, break it out into separate companies. Yeah. So in addition, so right now they're being told they have to accept new app stores because of Epic. They are being asked to spin out the Chrome browser and to provide their Google search data to other competitive search engines. And they're being asked to spin out their ad tech assets. So it's quite a array of problems that their legal department has right now.
I mean, they've been so good at avoiding it for so long.
Yeah. And it's interesting, whereas, their competitors like Apple and Facebook also have antitrust problems, but much less significant. And it's something about Google and the way they've sort of had this positioning as sort of open, but not really open. Like they're open, but on their own terms, that seems to have gotten them into hot water a lot. Whereas Meta Facebook is like, we're closed. You just can't play in our playground. And it's a little harder to argue that's anti-competitive. They're just playing with their own toys.
Fair enough. So Ari, what's your 1% edge? What are you working on these days to get 1% better every day?
Yeah, I think writing. So I've always been a pretty good writer, but there's something about writing a weekly newsletter. You have to come up with a new topic every Monday and throw 1,000 words against it. That is really something that requires practice. And then you do that for a couple of years, and then suddenly I decided to write a book, 300 pages. It's a real book. It's like 300 pages with footnotes and citations and stuff. And that was, taking it to the next level. And I think I'm almost pretty good at writing. I'm not sure. I need another book in me, I think, before I would declare myself actually pretty good.
Did you enjoy the whole process? Because a good buddy of mine, took a year off to write his first book. He's now releasing his third.
Right.
And he loved it. I mean, but he's like a historian. Like he loves to do the research and get the facts and then share them with others.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a really concentrated effort. It was hard, and I think the outcome was pretty good. It's getting great reviews, and people are really enjoying it. So I'd recommend everyone read it. Excellent.
Well, if people want to know more about the book and where to get it, or want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, so my podcast and newsletter is at marketecture.tv. That's like architecture with an M at it. And you can, for more on the book, you could go to my website, which is my full name, aripaparo.com, or you can just Google the word Yield and Yield book. It'll probably come up. So the book is called Yield, and it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, etc.
All right. Appreciate you so much coming on the podcast and sharing some of your views on ad tech. I thought it was very insightful.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carlos. This is a really interesting conversation.
Appreciate it. All right, folks, this does it for this week's episode. If you found some value in our conversation, please comment back and subscribe. We'd greatly appreciate it. And until next time, I wish you nothing but the greatest success. Thanks again, Ari.
Thank you.